So today I'll be introducing the food web of the coral reef. So I'll start by introducing our primary producers. So these are the organisms that are able to make food on their own. So the examples I chose are phytoplankton, seagrass, algae, and seaweed. And then next will be our primary consumers. So these will eat our primary producers. So some examples I chose are the green humphead parrotfish. Now the parrotfish is going to eat our algae in our coral reef. And then another primary consumer is the blue striped snapper fish, and they eat algae, plankton, other fish, and some shrimp. So we'll draw arrows for algae, plankton, and shrimp. Next will be our sea urchins, and they eat algae. And then we also have angelfish. They eat algae, plankton, and shrimp. And then sea sponges, which eat plankton. And we have shrimp that eat algae. And sea sponges that eat planktons and corals. And they consume products made by our algae. So next, I'll introduce our secondary consumers. So these organisms are going to eat our primary consumers. So some of the examples I chose are stingrays, octopus, and jellyfish. So the stingray, they eat shrimps. They also eat parrotfish, and they also eat our angelfish as well as our blue spine snapperfish. Our octopuses also eat a variety of organisms. They eat our parrotfish and our queen angelfish and our shrimps and our blue spine snapperfish. And our moon jelly, our jellyfish, also eats plankton, so that will be our primary producer. They also eat small shrimp, actually. And yes, that's our secondary consumers. Next will be our tertiary consumers, or our dominant predators in our coral reef, and they eat a lot of organisms, so there's going to be a lot of lines. So the two examples I chose are the black-tip reef shark and our Pacific humpback dolphins. So they eat almost anything. The majority of our organisms here are going to be eaten by our sharks, so we're going to be drawing arrows for our small fish such as parrotfish, our blue spine snapperfish, our queen angelfish. They also eat octopus and some shrimps and our stingrays. And for our humpback dolphins, they also eat most of our primary consumers, so our blue spine snapperfish, our parrotfish, our shrimps, and our angelfish. I'll also be introducing our decomposers and detritivores. So some examples of these are the sea cucumber, and they poop out clean sand and redistribute nutrients back into the coral reef, so they will be considered decomposers, and they eat algae and plankton, so we can add lines for them. Algae and plankton. And sea stars are also considered decomposers. And our sharks and stingray eat our sea stars, so we can also add lines for the sea star. And then for our detritivores, I included a crab. And our crabs are going to be eaten by our tertiary consumers such as our shark and our stingray. So next, I want to talk about our keystone species, and in our food web, our keystone species is our parrotfish, so it is our primary consumer. And the reason for that is that the parrotfish eats a lot of algae in our coral reef. And there's actually an example of what has happened in Jamaica when fishermen have been catching too many parrotfish. Now, if we get rid of our parrotfish, there's going to be a lot of algae left in our coral reef. Now, parrotfish play a crucial role in maintaining the coral reef ecosystem because they eat vast amounts of algae. Same with our sea urchins, actually. And our parrotfish also eat dead coral, so they make room for new coral to grow in its place. So coral reefs provide shelter and food for a wide range of marine species. And if we got rid of our parrotfish, our ecosystem is going to be overcrowded with algae and dirty corals, which will drastically change the whole environment. Now, you could also say that the corals itself are also a keystone species because they shape the environment as well. Now, not only will getting rid of our parrotfish change the environment, but it will also affect our food web because, as we see in these mess of lines, a lot of our organisms are eating our parrotfish. So if we were to get rid of our parrotfish, our predators of the parrotfish, such as our stingray, dolphins, octopus, blacktip reef sharks, will not have food to eat. However, if we compare the different animals, the shark still has a lot more animals to eat as compared to, let's say, our stingray. So our stingray population might be more affected than our reef shark because our reef shark is not so dependent on our parrotfish, unlike our stingrays. Now, as I said before, our blacktip reef sharks are our dominant species, and if they were gone, a lot of our organisms will not be eaten, and this might lead to population instability within our coral reef. So, for example, the stingray won't be eaten by our reef shark, and because our stingray also eats a lot of our smaller fish, such as our parrotfish or blue spine snapperfish or queen angelfish, those populations will also be affected. Some abiotic factors that will affect our food web will be water quality. So, in some places, pollution that's been dumped into the ocean destroys water quality and will lead to decreased oxygen in the water, and this will have significant impact on our primary producers. And if our primary producers are going to be affected, it's going to be a domino effect and affect everyone else in the ecosystem. So if there's no more primary producers, there won't be any food for our primary consumers to eat, and then no more food for our secondary consumers, and so on. Especially our algae, because as I mentioned before, our parrotfish rely so much on our algae, and if our parrotfish were to be removed from our coral reef, it will impact our ecosystem by a lot.